So a few days ago while working on the RX-7, I noticed the rear driver's side wheel had some play in it. I figured it was a bad wheel bearing, so I coughed up the money to Mazda and ordered a couple replacement bearings. Repair should have been pretty straightforward. Just unbolt the toe link, top and bottom bolts on the knuckle, the two bolts holding onto the brake caliper, and the one for the ABS sensor. What I'd forgotten though was the axle nut, and as it turned out I didn't have the 35mm socket to take it off. Son of a bitch. As I reinstalled all the bolts, I noticed that the play wasn't in the wheel bearing, but the hub itself. It wasn't a rubbery slop either, like a worn out rubber bushing. It was a distinct bit of play with a sudden stop. This could only mean one thing: pillow ball bushings. For those who are unfamiliar, most road cars use a bushing like the one on the top here, where relative movement is allowed between the center and outside bits of metal by a rubber sandwich in between them. This rubber is able to squish slightly, allowing some movement while also deadening vibrations from the road. The FD uses these too, but it also uses these. This is a pillow ball bushing, essentially a metal ball and socket which allows very controlled rotational deflections with almost no compliance in them. This makes the suspension sharper, but it also transfers more vibrations into the car, and as they wear out over time, they tend to loosen up, allowing the inner piece to knock against the outer. Mazda used 6 of these in the rear suspension of the FD, 1 in the upper wishbone, and 2 in the lower. I already replaced the one on the left a few weeks ago. The noise mostly seemed to be coming out of the upper wishbone, so I took that out first. 4 bolts are all that hold it in, but you also need to undo the sway bar link to take out the shock bolt. All the bolts are either 14 or 17mm. With the wishbone out, just pry out the rubber dust caps. And remove the snap ring. Here's the parts number for the bushing and the rubber caps. This socket's a little too small. This one should work. I think it was 22mm. Removal of the bushing will require a bearing press kit. You can usually rent these from any auto parts store, but I highly recommend using a shop press if you have access to one, as it makes this job a whole lot easier. As you see in a second, the cup I just grabbed was one size too small. Use a socket to press out the bushing on the opposite side that the snap ring was installed. Here's the pop as it starts to move. My press showed me that it didn't take more than a couple tons to start pressing it out. Here I am changing to the correct cup size when I see it stops coming out. And here it goes. Here's my new bushing. Put in a little grease. And install it tapered in first. You'll know it's fully seated when the resistance suddenly increases. Reinstall the snap ring. Apply some grease. And put in the new dust covers. As you can see, this new bushing is way tighter than the old one. Reinstallation is just a reversive removal. That definitely reduced some of the play, but there's still some left. Guess I gotta replace that last one. Removing the lower arm is an easy 3 bolts. After this, all the parts and steps are the same as the other bushing. To protect the tangs on the camber washer, make sure you're keeping the bolt mostly stationary and only turning the nut. Since I apparently didn't record myself giving the knuckle a good twist, you'll have to take my word for it when I say all the play is completely gone now. Now just to put back on the wheel nuts, torquing them down to 85 foot-pounds, and I'm all set. After replacement, there was a noticeable improvement in how solid the rear end feels. Before, when traveling over bumpy pavement in particular, I could occasionally hear something that sounded kind of like the sound of driving over a manhole cover. It was faint, but it was definitely there, and now it isn't, so the car feels a lot more solid overall. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it.